Okay, so we're going to talk today about this idea of halt and catch fire as it has to do with how we behave in our organizations. So halt and catch fire has to do, I actually wrote this down. In Wikipedia, it says, in the case of an HFC instruction, there is, by definition, no way for the system to recover without a restart. So I'm thinking maybe we need a restart. Maybe we need to restart the way we think about leadership in organizations. Maybe we need to think about great leaders at all levels of the organization. Anybody, formal, informal, if other people look to you for guidance, you're a leader. Mao Zedong used to say, if you see all the people going in one direction, get out ahead of them, and then you're the leader, right? Watch for the trends, right? So great leaders who create environments for impactful learning so that great teams can emerge, right? We all have teams in our organization, but as we talked yesterday, in my talk yesterday about, but can they seek greatness? Are they in an environment where they can really seek greatness? And so that's what we want to have happen. But have you lived this story? Something didn't go right. Something unexpected happened. We're having that meeting, the one where we're going to figure out what happened, where we're going to hold someone's feet to the fire, and everybody's getting their finger ready to point because they want to make sure it's not their feet that get held to the fire, right? No one wants the blame to fall on them. So, but then instead of what we could do is say, oh, hey, this issue happened. Let's focus on the future. What would be different? How could we make things different in the future? We turn to blaming. We turn to blaming each other. We look backward instead of forward, and we look for someone to blame. We want to assign it, and then we all feel better. Anybody been in that meeting? Anyone here ever? Yeah. Anybody lead that meeting? Yeah, okay. So the problem is, oops, did I go 2? I think I went 2. There we go. The problem is that when we blame each other, it often turns into a sense of shame for the person who got blamed, right? And what we're basically doing is telling each other that we're wrong and bad and not really very worthwhile. We don't know our stuff. We don't know how to do the work. You did it wrong, right? It's all over social media, isn't it? This mire we're in, it's whose fault is it, right? Let's spend all our time on that, right? So, and if it translates into shame, it can have some really terrible consequences. Brené Brown and other folks have written about that, how shame can really promote a lot of unhealthy behavior, feelings of distress, powerlessness, worthlessness. So we want to stay away from that. But as leaders, we get caught in a trap. I love this. We don't have a lot of options. We're not at least told that we have a lot of options. Blaming is how we get things done. That's how we motivate people. Is there anyone in this room that think that actually works? Right? So Peter Drucker, decades ago, says, so much of what we call management consists of making it difficult for people to do their work, right? He said that, it was like the 80s, the 70s, and we're in 2023, and we're still doing that. I mean, every organization I go into, I hear about micromanagement. I hear about, we don't know what the business direction is around here. We don't, things are obfuscated, where there's no transparency, right? So very often, people are promoted into leadership, or others look to them as leaders, but we get no real training. We know real what am I supposed to, I was really good at being a programmer. Why am I an engineering manager now? I've coached a number of those folks, right? Do I really want to be a man? I'd had a promotion, but I really liked coding. And now I have to write programs to make little games for my kids in my basement, because now I'm a manager. And I really just want to get in there and tell them how to do it, because I was a senior engineer and now I'm a manager, so, right? Of course, I haven't worked on this project, and I haven't been in this code base, but I'm sure that I could do a better, right? Unfortunately, we get our modeling on how to be a leader from people who may not deserve to be emulated in that way. Because who did they learn to lead from? Somebody told them, right? There's Tricia, this is the co-author of my book, Lead Without Blame. There's a story in the book about her pet peeve is when managers say, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Or what's some other famous sayings from that movie? Right? There are phrases that come up in our leadership talk in organizations that are actually based on a fictional story about the mafia. Right? So that's who we're taking, Don, what's his name, gets held up as an example of a powerful leader. And he was a mafiosi. When things didn't work out with one of his crew, it was, little worse than just a layoff, really. It's like a die-off. Okay. So we want to break free from that. We don't want to lead in that way anymore. We need a restart, right? We need to do things differently. So there's research that backs this up. In the October 2022 edition of Scientific American, which actually publishes like organizational research and stuff. Did anybody know that? I didn't know that until then. But I found this article called When Dominant Leaders Go Wrong. And it's October 2022. These two researchers looked at what happens when the dominant kind of controlling kind of leaders, those who know how to do it all and are going to tell you when you do it wrong and hold your feet to the fire and all those things. When they are in charge, what's the impact of that? And Hemant and Nero discovered that the impact is not good. And in fact, the author's research showed an assertive or forceful approach could reduce cohesiveness and collaboration for their employees. Now, what's one of the things we're looking for in our teams now? We talk about what kind of teams in the software world these days? Collaborative teams. This does not bode well for collaborative teams, right? We need, I think the whole world needs a different kind of leadership, but certainly in our space, we need a different kind of leadership. And there has been there's all kinds of research out there. I got overwhelmed by the amount of research that's out there that looks at what they call controlling versus autonomy supportive motivational styles. In other words, they're trying to motivate you either by controlling you or offering you some autonomy and support. Okay, show of hands. Which of you would rather have the controlling leaders? And which of you would like to have autonomy and support? All right, okay, good. So we're in agreement here. We're in agreement. We need to do something different. So, yeah, when we feel blamed by others or shamed by ourselves, we cripple our ability to perform well. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So, halt and catch fire. Let's rethink along with our restart. We don't want that anymore. That's going to take down the system. We need to do something different. So, Tricia and I wrote this book called Lead Without Blame. And as we were writing it, we coalesced a lot of her ideas and my ideas about where we had seen good leaders, where he had felt good leaders, where we felt we had performed best as good leaders. And we realized that leadership has worked best when it supports people in their learning and when it models learning. Being a learner at work. So we're going to talk more about that. So we created this model that if we're doing leadership through learning, we incorporate some new essential motivators. We need to think differently about motivators, and we need to think differently about what factors are going to help our teams be the most resilient. We are in a time now where things are changing rapidly. Everything is changing rapidly, right? The nature of the technologies are changing. Our governmental issues are changing. The climate is changing. I can think of very little. Love for my family has not changed. My love for my family is solid. But a lot has changed. And so in order for teams to perform well, they need to have those adaptability, resilience skills to move through that. And it's not the kind of resilience that has to do with, oh, you can throw anything at me and I'm never moving. It's not that kind of resilience. It's what recognizes the new and the need for the new. What recognizes the need to stop and catch fire and try something different in our systems. So the three essential motivators I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. They're all you could find them in the book, or you can find them in things that we've written online. So the three essential motivators are very much aligned with what Daniel Pink wrote about. Human systems are human systems. He wrote about individual humans and what motivates individual humans, and he said it's purpose, autonomy, and mastery, right? So when we think about teams are an up-leveled fractal of humans, right? So some of the same dynamics are at play, but in a slightly different way. So now we're talking about team purpose. What is our collective purpose that we feel collectively that we can align with and sign on to and so on? So we need, as Simon Sinek says, we need to know the why, but we need to know it as a team. How many of you have read The Wisdom of Teams, the Katzenbach and Smith kind of famous book, where the first thing they say is a hallmark of a really good team is that they agree on what it is they're trying to deliver together and why. They have that shared sense of purpose. So the second one is autonomy. But now again, we're talking about team autonomy. We're talking about those self-organizing, self-managing, self-directing, whatever we want to call it, kind of group of people who are thinking about the work together and doing the work together and have some decision-making authority over how the work gets done and a shared sense of identity about that. And then, and they take ownership together. Joint accountability is another one of the things that Katzenbach and Smith bring up in The Wisdom of Teams. And then the third one, Dan Pink calls it mastery. And that, he's very much focused on individual mastery, the 10,000 hours, all that stuff, right? But when we're talking about a team, this one is probably the most different of the three. Because on a team, we're talking about co-intelligence. How are we sharing our mastery? How are we growing our mastery together? How are we sensible about how our shared mastery, our shared sense of what we can accomplish, what we're capable of? We know what that is. We know if we need additional access to additional resource, or we need a person who has specific knowledge to come in and help us. We're aware of that as a team. We understand our capability, our capacity together, and we are working to transfer knowledge that we called for a long time generalizing specialists. Generalizing specialists are a hallmark of a team that is motivated by co-intelligence. We really want to know what we can do together. And the interesting thing about these three motivators, these free team motivators, is that you need all three. You need to be working on all three of these at the same time as leader. It's challenging, right? Because if you've got purpose and autonomy, but no co-intelligence, then probably what you're building, though you may all be in have a good sense of it and know where you're supposed to be going, the quality isn't going to be there. You're not going to be bringing the right skills to bear on it. If you've got purpose and co-intelligence, but no autonomy, you're probably leaving yourselves open to handoffs and dependencies and other kinds of blockers because you don't have the ability to make the decisions you need to make in the team. And then finally, if you've got co-intelligence and autonomy, but no purpose, that one's really great. Because as my friend Esther Derby always says, she makes this gesture, she said, you have Brownian motion. She does this, right? There's no cohesiveness without a purpose, right? You may be working and you may feel like, well, we're buds together, but we're not progressing toward anything. So those are the three motivators. Three. We think about those, and where does motivation come from? Does motivation come from the outside? Do I motivate Vasco to do his podcast? No, motivation is something that comes from within. So team motivation arises from within the team. It's the same thing. So in addition to the 3 motivators that leaders need to be paying attention to and fostering in their organization, we have 4 resilience factors. And the first of these is a collaborative connection. This has to do with, are we building a team of people who are growing their trust in each other, their ability to work together, their co-intelligence, their how are they working together? What is their dynamic? Psychological safety is captured in this. Can I make a mistake and not get blamed in my team? Collaborative connections, not fostered by controlling motivators or those dominant leaders so much. And then the second motivator, or the second resilience factor, is the ability to handle conflict. Whoops, back. Let's go back. Yeah, the ability to handle conflict. We have conflict resilience. We can agree to disagree in our team and still keep things moving forward. We do that by doing what Agile has talked about, extreme programming in particular has talked about for a long, long time. We handle things while they're small. We make them small and we handle them while they're small. Whether we're talking about story slicing or TDD, tiny unit tests, whatever we're talking about, we start with the small because that's the most effective. So if we want to build conflict resilience in our team, we start growing our ability to give and get and share feedback with each other, to seek feedback from each other. I felt uncomfortable in that meeting on Tuesday. You were there. I wonder if I overstepped my bounds. Could you tell me how you experienced how I was in that meeting? Right? Well, you interrupted me 6 times. Oh, jeez, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean to do that. Can we work out some kind of a signal so that when I've interrupted you, if I forget, I'm really going to try not to do that. But I might forget because I've got kind of a habit of it. Well, can we work out some signal so you can let me know so maybe I can manage that a little better, right? If we have those conversations when the issues are small, they don't blow up into, I never want to pair with him. I am never being on him because constantly he's interrupting me. And now it's a really big thing. And now the team is taking sides on who's right and who's wrong, right? Have you ever seen those kinds of things? Started out really small and then they become these big resentments. Yeah. I thought we should build this in Ruby, but, they wanted JavaScript. Right? If we can't talk about things when they're still small and come to some kind of agreement in our team or come to some sense of people of goodwill can disagree, let's try it your way first, and then if your way doesn't go the way you think, let's try it my way. If we can't do some of those things, we can't be a resilient team. We can't face crises when they show up in our midst. The next one is inclusive collaboration. This one is about differences. How do we manage the differences in our teams? Wherever, however, whatever, your background is this, my background is that. I have a word that I use and it means something completely different in your context, in your function. We need to be able to talk those things out. I mean, the differences can be that, or they can be, real differences of religion or background or all kinds of things. We need to be able to still create a good collaborative climate. And know for sure that the fact that we have these differences in our teams makes us better. Because now, collectively, as part of our co-intelligence, we have a variety of perspectives, right? You see things differently than I do. I've had a baby, you haven't. You know what? I know what it's like to have to juggle something. Well, I need this app to not need me to do when I'm, right? All those things. So inclusive collaboration, very important. And those first three, we all, are more commonly talked about in teams, particularly the inclusive collaboration lately around DEI. That's been a really big issue and is part of psychological safety. And we've talked about that a lot. And certainly the team building part of collaborative connection and the conflict management part we often talk about in teams. One we don't talk about very much is power dynamics. And when power dynamics are present in our team or are affecting our team from the outside, and how are we going to handle that? But that needs to be there as well. We need to know what kind of power we own in our team as part of our autonomy. What decisions can we make and what decisions can't we make? Those kinds of things. And if we are a team that is very diverse, is there a majority that's kind of dominating in decision-making over a minority in the team? Are there people who have job titles that automatically make them right? Right? So power dynamics is critical to really understanding power dynamics, formal power, informal power, dominant power, power that seems to be affecting us and coming from someplace we don't know where. What are we going to do about that? So those are the resilience factors that we need to pay attention to. Collaborative connection, conflict resilience, inclusive collaboration, and power dynamics. And those are things, doing all of those in a healthy way starts with what modeling are the leaders doing. Whether that's the tech lead on the team, whether that's the director, wherever and whoever in the organization is in a leadership role, what we, by virtue of you even being at this conference, you are here representing all the people who never come to conferences. You are already a group of leaders. So we are the ones that need to start our own learning and make sure that we are modeling the behaviors that we want to see in our teams that we know will make them more effective at delivering what the business needs for the customers or for their internal use. These 4 things. And we know that leaders intend to make a positive difference. I am a big believer in something called the retrospective prime directive. I think I mentioned it yesterday in the talk. I have yet to interview a single person who said, I showed up today planning to make everything crash and burn. Right? Things happen. And very often they're systemic kinds of things about our collective cultural system as on the team, or things about our software systems, or whatever it might be, the policies and procedure systems. And that affects how we work. So we may have an idea of that day, that shining day on the hill when I did my ultimate best job. And we think that we should be able to come and do that every day. But that's not true. That, some days we have a cold. Some days we have a problem, a terrible thing happens from somewhere between our kitchen where we were having breakfast or didn't have breakfast, and wherever it is we're doing our work. Right? A fight with someone who's near to us, or all kinds of things can happen and impact our ability to do that best, but we still show up doing the best we're capable of that day. And sometimes we can admit what I was capable of that day was not adequate to what the team needed. So what are we going to do about that? We're going to blame each other? No, we're going to look to the system. Well, how do you think that happened? I don't know. I got into it and I didn't really, I didn't know the pattern that we'd been working on. I didn't know I hadn't really practiced that. And I pushed the wrong button. Well, I wonder why that button was in a place that you could have pushed it. Right? Is there some way we could engineer things so that that button is not in a place where it's easy to push? Right? That's what happened in the story, the Etsy story of the three-armed sweater. Anybody familiar with the three-armed sweater story? Of the young person who had come to work, and somehow or another they were one of the reliability engineers. Say that 6 times fast. One of the junior reliability engineer, and they were assigned to keep the pager all weekend. And something started happening, and they did the wrong thing. And instead of stopping the thing that was happening, the whole site went down at Etsy. Now, this is a leader to emulate. Had a conversation. Would you do that again? No, I don't plan to do that again. Now I'm clear on what I could have done differently, right? Well, congratulations. You showed up a gap in our security that we did not know existed before. So this year you get the three-armed sweater award for helping us to see what we needed to do to improve our system. And they have continued to give the three-armed sweater award every year since then for somebody who makes the best mistake that exposes a vulnerability. I think that's awesome, right? More interested in learning how to prevent it from happening again in the future than in blaming the person who did it this time. Okay, so let's restart. Let's do this whole restart. What's a leader to do? I've been giving you a lot of stuff here and saying, essential motivators, resilience factors, it's our job as leaders. Right? That's a lot, and it's hard. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's not my habit of how I've been doing things. Well, I've got some good news to you. And hardly anybody's been taking these stickers. So there are reminder stickers on the table out there for this one. The learning leaders 4 C's for behavior. Here's where we want to be focusing. Courage. Chip Bell says that leaders need to learn out loud. We need to be public learners. And that means if somebody comes to us thinking that we are the know-it-all manager or whatever, we say, you know what? I don't know about that. We admit what we don't know or our mistakes or our need to learn something. And somebody comes to us and we say, let's go figure it out together. And then you can share it with the rest of the team. Or maybe it's a whole team thing. Let's all go figure it out together, right? I don't know yet. We've never run into that before. That's the kind of world we're in right now. The we've never run into that before world. And so we need to be prepared still to act. Kinevin model, anybody here Kinevin model fan? Yeah, well, when they talk about, when we talk about the world is in chaos or we're in a chaotic situation, what do? Call it out. What do we do when we're in a chaotic situation? We act. And then we notice what happens. And then we decide if that action took us in the direction we wanted or not, and so on. But the very act of acting, of taking an action when we don't actually know what's going to happen, helps us to move out of the chaos, starts us on that path. So learning out loud, encouraging discovery, encouraging questioning, that's that courageous job of the leaders now. The next one is compassion. Interestingly enough, not everybody has had a really wonderful experience of being a learner before. For some of us, even just having been in public school has given us learning, I don't know if I want to go there or not. Right. But again, Deming says drive fear out of the workplace. So how do we make learning more accessible? How do we make sure that people don't need to feel fearful of it? What we also know is that there's this phrase called the learning curve, that when we are learning something new, at first we do it kind of awkwardly and it takes us a longer time. And, and then as we practice it, it gets easier and easier. Anybody experienced that with anything you've ever learned? Yeah, and then finally one day you're like, gosh, I thought I was learning to drive a car, but now I'm at work and I'm not exactly sure how I got here. Right? Now it's yours. Now the driving is yours. You don't, it's become a part of you. That's how we learn. But there is that learning curve and there is that slowdown part. And so when the team has something big to learn, we've got to know that there's going to be a slowdown. And we need to have some patience for that because the acceleration will come if we support the learning. So caring, patience around that. Confidence. This is not, I hear a lot of managers that kind of do, go team, kind of cheerlead, but they don't really believe that what they're cheering on is going to happen. No, that's not this. This is, we've demonstrated through saying, I don't understand that, let's go figure it out together. We've demonstrated that our team knows how to learn things. We've done it together. We've given them the patience and compassion to work through some hard learning challenges. We know they got through it. We know they've got solid capability. So now we have confidence that our team can meet any challenge. We just ask them for what they need. What do you need to get us through this? And then finally is complexity. I asked a little before about Cynefin. There's a lot of different complexity models and chaos models and systems models out there. Whatever one makes the most sense to you is the one you want to take a deeper dive in, because complexity is about emergence, is about things working together in ways we don't expect. It's about living in this VUCA world. I know that a number of people at this conference have mentioned VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That's the world we live in. Probably always have, but it seems faster now. It seems more intense now. I don't know, to me. But of course, I wasn't the age I am now 25 years ago. So I don't know if people the age I am now felt like things were moving fast then too. I don't know. I know my grandmother, who was born in 1906 and experienced a lot of technological change in her lifetime. Where she grew up in a little town in Indiana, she watched horses and buggies turn into automobiles. She got telegraphs turned into telephones. She radios, TVs, cars on the road all over the place, major highways that you have to navigate. I mean, lots and lots. And when in her area, when they decided that the telephone numbers where she lived were no longer going to be just the 7 numbers, but we were going to add in the area code too. She just turned to all of us and said, "That's it. I can't remember that many numbers. You're going to have to call me if we're going to communicate." Because in her world, she had all the numbers memorized. And adding that on to all the other things, that was like, okay, this is my stopping point with this much technology. We laughed. Now I put an app on my phone, and it asks me like 4 questions and 5 screens, and before it lets me do what it said it was going to let me do, and I am mad about that. I never want to use this thing again. And I'm like, oh, Grandma. Now I understand. Okay, so this is what we do as leaders. And it sounds maybe back. Yeah. It sounds maybe too touchy-feely, too fluffy bunny, too humane, right? I've had people call me variously a visionary pragmatist or a pragmatic visionary. But pragmatism is always in there. I am very practical. I can see far, but I want it to work. And I believe the bottom line here is we spend a lot of money recruiting people to our teams, taking them through the hiring process, figuring out, what they're going to need, what things they're going to need in the organization, getting them all set up with their health care and their direct deposits and all that stuff, right? Turnover is expensive. So how do we become those leaders that people want to stay with? That people don't want to leave? That people say, I love my job. This is the best job ever. I can't wait to get to work on Monday. Right? I've run into those people. I actually am one of those people, but then I kind of created my own job. But I have those folks that exists for people. Right? Lead without blame. Do not rely on blaming to motivate people. Rely on encouragement, rely on future focus, rely on how can we address this thing that just happened. Don't rely on blaming. Emphasize learning in the service of resilience. We need to learn stuff so that when this complex world starts throwing things at us, we have the confidence that we can learn our way through it. We want to get the best with the people we have. We don't want to always have to be out looking for new folks. Or if we, need more horsepower, we've got good teams to bring them into that are going to embrace them and help them become part of the co-intelligence quotient of that team. And we know we need to produce value through motivation. Not through chiding, not through micromanaging, not through looking over anybody's shoulder, but through autonomy, supportive leadership. And there's tons of research that backs this up. So, onward from today, I invite you to review where in your world you believe you've got, you've got the courage thing going on, you got the compassion thing going on. Where would you like to kind of bolster your leadership behaviors a bit? Think about what stands out for you about your experience of this conference so far, your experiences of leadership. Do a little reflection, little introspection. What new insights and learning will you take away? When you leave here tomorrow noon or tonight or whenever it is you're going, What are you taking away with you? What's the, remember, slice it down small. Don't try to take on too big a bite, right? What's the one thing that you might try on Monday? Which of the 4 C's will you focus on first? What interactions have you had here that you could build on to create a network of support for yourself as a leader? There's some pretty good quality potential in this room for your networks. So restart. Go forth, lead, and do it through activating the learning in your organization and in yourself. Thank you.